Bigfoot Society would like to thank the following sponsors for helping make the podcast possible. The Singular Fortean Society has combined open and honest paranormal investigation and journalism since 2016. Visit the Society at Singular Fortean for all the latest weird news and more. Come with us and investigate the impossible. Lauren Smith is the hostess for Nightcaller's Bigfoot Radio, which has been on air for over a decade and has completed over 300 shows. Lauren brings with her a unique viewpoint given that she is not only the daughter of one of the veteran female Bigfoot researchers in the South, but she has been conducting field research since she was a preteen some 20 years ago. Nightcallers is a Bigfoot world favorite and, along with interviewing researchers and witnesses, often features interviews with guests from the documentary, film, and entertainment industry. Lauren also does a vidcast segment called Nightcallers, which features real encounters sent in by viewers. You can find all of this and more at nightcallersproductions.com. Thanks for coming back to the Bigfoot Society podcast. We have a special bonus episode tonight where I was able to have my friend Daniel Perez from the Bigfoot Times come on for a special phone interview / clubhouse room. So a lot of people were listening live on the interview, which was cool. But he's going to talk about his recent trip out to the film site and what special experiment, what they're doing out there and what they're trying to figure out. So you're going to enjoy this recent info from the film site from Daniel Perez. And also we talk about the new documentary just posted today on the Sasquatch Archives and how that ties into the Bigfoot Times and why it's a really big deal. So all in all, a fun interview, always a pleasure and a privilege to talk to my friend Daniel Perez from the Bigfoot Times. But enjoy, and thanks for hanging out.
Okay, Jeremiah, you're on with Daniel.
All right. Hey, Daniel, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Perfect. Yep. I can hear you. Tate, is there any way you might be able to turn your phone up a little bit?
Maybe.
If not, that's anything you can do.
This should be better.
Okay. All right, Daniel, I'll have you say something else real quick.
Hello, can you hear me?
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for your patience. We're going to go ahead and start the interview with Mr. Daniel Perez from the Bigfoot Times. Daniel, we are currently broadcasting live through an app called Clubhouse. We've got a few friends with us tonight, and we'll be hopefully getting some audience questions at the end. But let's chat for a few minutes first. So tell me. So I had you on earlier, about a week or so ago, and we talked about all sorts of cool stuff to do with the Patterson-Gimlin film. And then you sent me a message and said, "Hey, I'm actually going back to the film site, and I'd love to talk to you about it." And I said, "Hey, that sounds like a great idea. Let's make it happen." So tell me all about what brought you back to the film site.
More testing and experimentation. Because
Okay.
we do not know all the answers yet about the film and the circumstances that surround it.
Well, I mean, you've done this. You've been in this game for about 40 years. So what could possibly be left to test, and what data is there left to get?
Well, the thing is, when you're only on the film site maybe a couple of days per year, based on weather conditions and so forth, and having to work, it's not like it's a year-round activity. I mean, you have to go home and do your homework and then go out and test things. And so on this trip, a few of us, myself, namely these people, Rowdy Kelly, myself, and Robert Leiterman, we did a couple of things. We did some tree trimming. And according to my forest knowledge, you can trim trees in a national forest, but you can't cut them down.
Sure.
So we kept to that motto. So trimming trees opens up the view. And essentially what we are trying to do over the course of many years is to try to recreate frame 352, but a notation there, it's actually not frame 352. According to Bill Munz's verified film count, I believe it actually is frame 354. But that's neither here nor there. What Rowdy Kelly did, which was just absolutely brilliant, because there's trees in the background that are seen in frame 352 on the left and on the right. He put very bright lights, and mind you, the background trees to the creek is roughly 200 feet, if I'm not mistaken, but it's a good considerable distance. You could think of it as Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin being by the creek, the subject being in the middle, and the trees that you see in the very background being the very background. That entire distance is, I think, actually we pulled a measurement, but don't quote me. I think it's 263 feet, the entire length. So it's very long. But what we did is I brought a laser with me.
Okay.
Heavy duty laser, and we thought maybe we could make that work. But even though that area is very much overcast, even in broad daylight because of all the trees, the red light just kind of fades out. So Rowdy's idea was to put these, work lights, portable work lights, attached to the trees in the background, and we could see those very good. So those became our flag post from right, or you could actually look at it like goalposts from left to right. And so then we could see that this is the edge of frame, and this is the edge of frame from left to right.
That's cool. That's really cool. So Rowdy Kelly, Robert Leiterman, for people that may not be aware, they are both members of the Bluff Creek Project. I've got setting up an interview with Robert Leiterman right now for sometime in the next few weeks on the podcast. So that's really cool. He was one of the gentlemen that was able to go with you as well. How long has it been since you've been at the film site, Daniel?
The last time I was there was October of 2018.
Okay.
And in 2019, I had work obligations that did not allow me to get away. And in 2020, it was the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, if you will. And so I just kind of didn't do a whole lot. And then October 2021, this month, I made a decision, let's go back and see if we could do some work back there.
That's awesome. So the main goal of the trip this time then to kind of clear out the trees a little bit?
No, that's kind of like making your bed.
Okay.
It's something you have to do every day because it gets unmade. And so because you have such tremendous annual rainfall in that area, everything grows like a weed.
Makes sense.
So you've got to scale it back every time you're there, almost like mowing a lawn.
Yep, sure.
Just to kind of keep up with it. And so that was just standard maintenance work to trim things back. And when you trim things back, your view is much better. And so that's what we did. But our purpose, our experimentation was to take my Kodak K100 camera, the same exact type model that Roger Patterson used on that historic occasion.
Okay.
And to experiment with three lenses. We had the 25 millimeter lens, the 20 millimeter lens, and the 15 millimeter lens. And we wanted to see which lens would be the best fit. And we actually used Kodak film. You could still get 16 millimeter Kodak film. We put a roll of 16 millimeter Kodak film and experimented with a test subject who is a reporter, a writer. I guess he works at a college in Boston, Massachusetts. His name is John O'Connor, and he's 6 feet tall, and he was our test subject. And we had him walk in the pathway what you would call the rough general vicinity of the best frames of the film,
Sure.
the 352, and going forward and going backwards. And so we had sequences we filmed sequences with the 25, the 20, and the 15. So right now we don't have the answer because it's not digital. You have to wait till the film is processed.
Okay, yeah.
And then we're going to see which one is the best fit, because looking back, when I wrote my little booklet, Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, I was in discussion. I was on the phone with Rene DeHinden constantly, and he told me that the camera was equipped with a 25 millimeter lens.
Okay.
I never bothered to ask, how did you know that? But presumably he went to Shepard's camera shop in Yakima, Washington to find this information out. Because when he started researching the camera and when he started researching the film site, by then Roger was already long gone, so you couldn't ask him questions.
Sure. That's fantastic. The detective work that Renee did there. I'm gonna get, well, first let's do a little important info for anyone listening to this. Who is this Daniel Perez guy? If you haven't heard the previous interview I've done with him, you need to do that as well. But Daniel, you are the author, owner, news journalist of the Bigfoot Times, which is the longest running Bigfoot actual physical newsletter you can get in your mailbox every month, which is fantastic. I'm a subscriber myself, and I have to say it's the best thing you can get as a Bigfooter in the year. I mean, the stuff in there is stuff you're not going to read anywhere else, but I'm going to guess, Daniel, that the photos you get from this are going to make their way into the Bigfoot Times. Am I right?
100%.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, again, that is the essence, because I publish the newsletter. I'm the editor.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, you can't just jump on the Bigfoot forums. You can't jump on a Facebook group or on any other Bigfoot website and say, like, well, we can get that information here. It comes out in the newsletter. And so for anyone wanting to get the newsletter, just go to bigfoottimes.net and you could get a very affordable membership, $18.50 a year.
So literally like 2 Starbucks and you've got stuff coming to your mailbox 12 times a year, which is fantastic. What is the main thing so from this experiment, Daniel, what is the main thing that you're wanting to prove? Let's make it really high level for the listeners.
Well, that's a very good question. And the answer is there's been a very big debate as to how tall the subject, which is affectionately known as Patty, how tall the subject is in the movie film. There's a photographic formula that you could use, the focal length of the camera, the distance to the subject, and according to that information, you could determine the size of the subject you're filming. And so this is the essence of the whole thing. But let me stop there and just point out other methods early on that determine the size of the subject, but based on the Bigfoot community, many researchers and investigators, they dispute that claim.
Okay.
So early on, in August of 1972, Peter Byrne with Rene DeHinden were on the film site, and he took some black and white photos, and he used Al Hodgson's son, the late Al Hodgson from Willow Creek. His son is named Mike Hodgson, who I believe was 6 feet tall. And they put him exactly in the spot, I think in frame 352, and took a picture of him. And they basically superimposed him over Patty. So he's basically standing in the same spot. And so 72 is what, 3, 4, 5 years after the fact, but everything
Sure.
is still pretty much the same. And it was the determination at that time that the subject was like right around 7 feet 2 inches. So later, when Peter Byrne got some funding for his Bigfoot research project, and this is the mid-1990s and kind of later 1990s, he employed a forensic scientist by the name of Jeff Glickman, who was running an organization, NASI. I forget what the acronym means, but they did what you would call a forensic examination of the film footage. And again, they basically employed the same methodology, and they were able to determine once again that the subject in the film is roughly 7 foot 3 inches plus or minus 1 inch. So that was another method of determining the height. But let me stop you there. It's almost like one of those infomercials when I say,
but wait, there's more.
Yeah, but there really is more. So if we go back to 1971, the summer of 1971, the late René de Hinden from Canada was on the film site. And he collected a piece of wood. And I often told him, "You mean a branch?" And he says, "No, a piece of wood." Basically, I guess debris from logging or whatever. It's not a tree branch. It's a piece of wood that was roughly 26 inches in length. And so he collected it because he took a copy of the movie with him, and he had the copy of the movie in the reel with a nail, nailed into a story pole, if you will, like you think like a pole vault, but wooden. And as he was looking through it and actually looking at the film site, he realized there was debris on the forest floor where Patty had walked. And it clearly showed that Patty was in the immediate vicinity of this piece of wood. Okay. Because when you study the film, it either walks on it or steps right next to it. And he said, "Oh, that's neat. Maybe I could do something with it in terms of maybe we could use it as a scale to measure Patty." So he took it home, but mostly, as he told me, he took it home as a souvenir. So later, Chris Murphy, who's still living in British Columbia, kind of became aware of this information as he associated with René de Hinden. Long story short, he kind of used it as his measuring gauge to measure Patty, because Patty was either stepped on it or right next to it. Therefore, you can do a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of using that piece of wood to measure the unknown subject.
Wow.
And again, that subject comes out to be about 7 foot 3 inches tall. So all I can say is, when you come back with these numeric values, you said, "Oh, that's awfully interesting that you're hitting the mark every time." And I might add that Roger Patterson's initial estimate of the size of the subject was about 7 feet 4 inches tall.
That's from the documentary. Yeah, he did say that 100%. Yep.
Yeah, and so it certainly appeared that he seemed to be a pretty good gauge of being able to determine height at a distance. And curiously, Bob Gimlin did not say it was that tall. He thought it was quite a bit smaller. But you have to remember that Bob was on a horse at the time during probably his best observation.
Yep.
So maybe he was looking down at the subject. And so the higher you are, you tend to see things as smaller than you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's good logic there. Before we continue, so people in the audience live on Clubhouse, eventually we will get to a Q&A section. If you have a question for Daniel, could you do me a favor and just type that in a message to me on Clubhouse by using the little airplane icon, just so that I can see what kind of questions we have, and then we'll bring up people one by one to do questions eventually. But just a heads up on that. Daniel, going back to the film site, did you notice anything different about it that had changed over the last few years, or is it pretty much the same type of spot?
Very much the same spot. And one thing that there was a report, like I said, there was a guy writing a book, has a contract to write a book on Bigfoot, and he came down to see us from Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And he said, what I pointed out to him, I said, the first time I was on the film site unknowingly was in 2003. Prior to that, I had walked by the film site without being able to identify it. So I've been in the immediate general vicinity. But the most deceptive thing about the film site is how large it is. You could fit a football field in that film site. It's that big.
Really?
Yes. And when you see, when you're not physically there and you're watching or looking at a book at frame 352 or watching the movie on YouTube or on a television special on Bigfoot, you're just seeing a flat screen. So you don't really get the appreciation of how big that area is. It's a very big area. And even when I was there just days ago, the grandeur of it in the sense of how big the film site is, it's overwhelming, and it's something that most people do not fully appreciate or understand.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the bucket list. Hopefully someday I can make it work to get there for myself. Someday that will happen, but it sounds like a very, very cool place. It's harder to get to than most people realize, though, correct?
I mean, if you live in California, it's not too bad.
Okay.
I'm in the Los Angeles area, so it's more than a 800-mile drive for me just one way. But it's no big deal because, how can I say this? You want to find enjoyment in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us have jobs, and somehow before you go to your death, you're going to spend your money. And so some people spend their money playing golf because that is enjoyable to them. And so I just happen to spend my money doing this because it's enjoyable to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you can't take it with you, so you may as well spend it on what you enjoy and figure out what you enjoy. So yeah, good words there. Yep.
Well,
very good.
I will tell you this, that because it's in the film site is in the Six Rivers National Forest in Del Norte County, is that if a Bigfoot were found tomorrow, you would have people lined up blocks long wanting to go see that film site. They said, oh my God, it is real. It's not just a man in a suit. I got to go see where that famous movie was made.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, I guarantee you, the Park Service would have to do something to discourage people from going to see it. Because when I was in London in 2012 for the Olympic Games, I went over with a friend, the late Paul Vella. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with him, but we went over to see Stonehenge. And he told me as a boy, you could walk right up to Stonehenge and physically touch it.
Wow.
But not anymore. So when I was there in 2012, you could only get a certain distance to it, and there's no longer hands-on. And so that may be the case with the PG film site if it becomes overwhelmed with traffic.
Yeah, and that's a catch-22 situation, because it's like everyone wants for Bigfoot to be like accepted by the world and the scientific community. But on the other hand, how terrible would it be if the film site becomes overrun with all the people, and it's like those pictures you see on Instagram of people going to national parks and having to wait like hours in line just to hike up to this spot and take a picture for Instagram. I mean, that would be terrible if that kind of thing ever happened, but yeah.
Yeah, that would be the forest rangers' responsibility to implement the plan if things ever did get out of control.
Oh yeah.
But one thing that I have noted from, because that area gets so much rainfall that I did take note of this time, is that the stumps that are seen in the film, in the movie film, that when we were there on our big study in the summer of 2012, that they have since deteriorated even more. So the stumps are in very poor condition, but they're still hanging on. They're still there.
Wow.
If they eventually go away, we'll probably have to put some sort of marker there that this was a stump that is seen in the film.
Yeah, that would be cool. And were you able to look at the new book that the Bluff Creek Project has coming out soon?
Yes, I have right here in my
nice.
hand. This is authored by Robert Leiterman, a retired forest ranger. It's called the Bluff Creek Project, and this is an advanced copy. It's called plastered all over it. It says not for resale. It's an excellent book, and it goes on sale at the end of the month, and it's over, if I'm not mistaken, over 600 pages.
It's massive.
And it's filled with documentation, photos, maps, and everything. And I'm just happy to have been a contributor to it. In fact,
totally.
I did the preface. Let's see. Just 1 second. The foreword to the book is written by me.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I would recommend everyone that when this becomes available to probably get your hands on it, because it's a very valuable reference about the Patterson-Gimlin film site.
Oh, for
Not
sure.
the sensational stuff, but the real, the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one for the serious researcher that they'll want to put on their bookshelves for sure. I have a question for you about the last issue, the current issue, October issue of Bigfoot Times. So there are a few articles in there, of course, but the article that really piqued my interest was your Bob Titmus article, which is very cool. And there's a portion in that article where you talk about a newspaper article that you found in your belongings, in your collection, rather, you could say, from 1972, where a journalist interviews Bob Titmus, and pretty much there's information about that there wasn't just the one film, but there were multiple films that he saw that Patterson had filmed or that were filmed at the film site. And that is very cool because it actually ties in with something that was released today on Sasquatch Archives, which most people will know this, but it's a very amazing YouTube channel where it's all historical archive footage and documentaries. But there was a BBC documentary put on this channel today, Bigfoot America's Abominable Snowman, which is from 1968, and it's only been seen one time, I believe. It's very rare, so to see this. But in that particular documentary, it ties into that article in the Bigfoot Times because you can actually see, like, there's new footage from the Patterson-Gimlin film in that documentary, right, Daniel?
Yes, there is. And in fact,
it's wild.
My understanding, or what's been clarified to me, is there was two versions of it. One that the BBC did, I guess, in 1968, and one that both Roger Patterson and his brother-in-law, Al Yatley, did, I guess, after the fact, I guess in 1969. And it was pointed out to me by Willow Creek Bigfooter Stephen Screwford that they seem to be, there's quite a bit of difference between the two. I've seen one that was presented at Mike Rugg's Bigfoot conference in Felton, California, many years ago, and I think that was the BBC version.
Okay. Watching the documentary for myself today, it's cool to see that footage where they're filming the actual trackway and the casting of the tracks is very cool. So definitely check that out. And if you can get your hands on the October issue of the Bigfoot Times, that is worth reading that article as well.
Well, some of the things that were brought out in my article on Bob Titmus, which was from the Tacoma News Tribune from 1972, which I was actually on the Labor Day weekend looking for some information that Cliff Barackman wanted. And so as I was digging through, I went a little farther, and lo and behold, I find this article about Bob Titmus, and I thought it had something to do with some phony tracks, some other tracks from, I guess, Eatonville, Washington. But then as I read a little more, he had a discussion about the PG film, and he said that after he saw the film in British Columbia, in Vancouver, British Columbia, and met with Roger and Bob, that he made a decision to fly down. Prior to that, I just assumed that he drove down. But when you start to think about it, it's just like, well, if he drove, he would have had, because you're going from Canada through Washington.
It would have been too late.
Of Oregon.
Yep.
And then that would have been a heck of a drive.
Oh, yeah.
And that he explained to the reporter that he flew. So he flew down to California, then obviously got a rental car, and then drove up there to do what he needed to do. And he found the place, and he made plaster of Paris castings.
Mm-hmm.
So here you have the late, great Bob Titmus coming down, and he was a man of modest means, but I guess he realized the gravity of the moment. And with his own funds, there was no social media to get a GoFundMe account back then.
Exactly. Yep.
He jumped on a plane to come down, and then he got a rental car, more expense, and then the plaster of Paris, more expense, and then he spent some days there on the film site looking around and making the plaster of Paris castings. And then before he died, he donated those original castings to the Willow Creek Bigfoot Museum. So here was an individual that it was not about him, it was about the subject matter, because he was always giving, in the sense that he was adding to the evidence of Bigfoot's existence and adding to the veracity of the PG film by doing what he did. So, he kind of etched his name into Bigfoot immortality by going down and studying the film site. And as he told the reporter, he said, I think this is an exact quote, he said he found positive supporting evidence of what took place, of what the story was. He said he saw Roger's tracks, and he saw the horse tracks, and he saw the tracks of the creature. And so everything to him, as a taxidermist, just added up. And if everything were fake, he would have blown the cover on it immediately, but he did not. And he said everything was as they said it was.
I love that. If anyone, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
He also talks about up at the UBC. I don't know if it was at the UBC. It may have been at a hotel, but let's just say in Vancouver, British Columbia, because the UBC is there, and also the hotel was there too. He also says that he saw the films, plural, and that's emphasized in the article.
Mm-hmm.
It says films with an S, and so that means he saw the Patty film. He saw the subject film, and then he also saw a separate film of the tracks that was taken with a second roll of 100-meter film. Yeah, so he saw two films, and so there exists two films, one of the subject and one of the footprints that were left behind. So that was all the documentation that Roger did, and he came down and further documented by making plaster of Paris castings. I think he made about 12 of them, and I think 10 survived that are at the Willow Creek Bigfoot Museum.
That's awesome. If anyone has a question for Daniel, this would be a great time for you can message that to me, or if you'd like to raise your hand, we can live dangerously and do that as well. Yeah, we'll give you a few minutes if anyone has any questions for Mr. Daniel Perez, who is the editor of the Bigfoot Times and all around Bigfoot guy. He's got, I would say, you definitely have the biggest Bigfoot collection that's been proven, right?
The biggest physical files.
Yes, that's
paper.
right. While we see if anyone has any questions, I don't think I asked you this last time, but what is the most, maybe not valuable book monetarily, but valuable to you book that you own in your collection? Which one means the most to you?
Well, because he was a personal friend, I think the book that Renee DeHinden and Don Hunter wrote,
Oh,
I
sure.
think it's called Sasquatch.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
I guess it was released in 73,
Mhm.
and so my copy is personally inscribed to me by him. And so that one it's very valuable to me in a sentimental way. But also John Green's book that was published in 78, I think it's very valuable because he breaks up everything and he looks at everything from a journalistic, scientific point of view and kind of breaks everything down. And he says, this is what's happening on the East Coast. This is what's happening on the West Coast and
Sure.
Canada, etc. So, yeah. And in terms of monetary value, I think Roger Patterson's hardback copy of Abominable Snowman Legend Come to Life
Oh, yeah.
proven to be a real high value book.
That is really cool. That's really cool. Is there one that you have looked for over the years? I don't think I asked you this either. That you've looked for over the years and it just escapes your grasp?
I think it's a booklet that David Attenborough from the United Kingdom
Okay.
wrote, and I guess it's called Fabulous Animals or something like that. And this was probably published shortly after the PG film came out, late 60s. And my understanding is David Attenborough, Sir David Attenborough has a very open mind to it. But I know about it, but I do not have that in my collection. I would love to get it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if any listeners have that, just hit up Daniel Perez on Facebook and make his dreams come true for sure. Tate, I have got you up here. Any words, Tate, or questions for Daniel at all?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I remember the last time I saw Daniel in 2018 at the film site. We ended up making an impression in the substrate with a copy of the Patterson-Gimlin trackway. That's on film. I think Jeffrey Thomas took a video of that, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, and Daniel's a good guy, and it's good to have him in the book. And I got to help with a little bit of the book too. So, it's going to be an awesome book, and definitely keep up with Daniel's Bigfoot Times and go subscribe to that newsletter.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Daniel, before we start to wind down the interview, do you have any things that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover, or closing thoughts or anything of that nature?
Well, the closing thought is that until that film is developed, or experimental film with experimenting with 3 different types of lenses, the question on the subject's height is open. So we would like to know the exact height, but we don't know exactly yet. And one thing that I could add, which it seems kind of stupid, but I'll point it out anyway, if you were to say 2 + 2 = 5, that would be wrong.
Right.
That would be wrong, but at the same time, you would be close. So with experimenting with the lenses, we don't want to be close. We want to hit it We don't want to be close because 2 + 2 is almost 5, but
Right.
not quite. We want to be dead on. So that's the reason why we're doing experimentation, because we don't want to be close. We want to be dead on.
That's true. Yeah, definitely put in the extra effort to get that 100% accurate data. That is awesome. Well, Daniel, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. We've had a few chats now. If you could remind the listeners of the podcast and YouTube, what are the best ways to keep up to date with what you're doing, and also about how to subscribe to the Bigfoot Times again, that would be awesome.
The Bigfoot Times, simply go to bigfoottimes.net, and the newsletter is approaching 25 years of run time. And I don't think anyone has ever done that, so I'm just delighted that we are approaching that milestone.
Fantastic. And if you want to hear more of me chatting with Daniel, there is an episode a few back on the Bigfoot Society podcast where we go more into detail about different things to do with the Patterson-Gimlin film site. But thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, Daniel, and hopefully we will chat again in the future.
I'm sure we will, and it's been a delight talking with you once again.
All right. Have a good one. Rum, I'm going to go ahead and close things out. Tate, Tate, thank you so much for saving the day, literally, and you're a good dude, so I appreciate you. And if you are new to this room, make sure that you hit the Cryptozoology Club up at the top and join the club so that you don't miss out on any future rooms. Craig from All.the.Weird will be doing some great Halloween cryptid-themed spooky rooms on Thursday nights, so you won't want to miss those. But thanks again all for hanging out tonight, and have a great rest of your night.
Later, everybody.
Later. Thanks for taking your time out of your busy day and spending some time with us. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, and your preferred podcast platform. And if you have any stories, you can give us an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And again, check out the articles we have and more, preferred book lists at bigfootsocietypodcast.com. You can always go to Instagram at Bigfoot Society. And we have a TikTok now. It gets pretty crazy there. Bigfoot.society at Bigfoot.society. Thanks again for taking your time listening to the Bigfoot Society podcast. We'll see you next week. Next Saturday will be a new episode. And also, if you want to take part in the live taping of the episode and put your questions in there for the guest, just remember, subscribe to the Bigfoot Society YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any of those episodes. Thanks again, all, and we'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Bigfoot Society. Any content provided by our guests are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone. Thank you.